New Deep Dive.
So, if you've been plugged into the tech world recently, you probably couldn't have missed the headlines, big ones, about significant workforce reductions at Microsoft.
Yeah, definitely making waves.
It's the kind of news that really makes you wonder, what's really going on behind the scenes there? Are these just like routine cuts, or is there a bigger story unfolding?
Well, that's exactly what we want to explore in this deep dive. Our mission really is to go beyond just the initial news reports.
Right.
We want to try and uncover the strategic shifts, look at the hard numbers, and the broader implications of these large-scale workforce reductions at Microsoft. We've been digging into their financial reports, executive statements, and some really insightful tech industry analyses to try and give you the whole picture.
Okay, great. So we're diving into this latest wave of cuts at, well, one of the world's most influential tech giants. And it really offers us a fascinating window, doesn't it, into how these massive companies are actually adapting.
Adapting to a really rapidly evolving market.
Especially with the monumental rise of AI everywhere. Let's really get into this.
Yeah.
So maybe to start, let's just unpack the core numbers. What actually happened? On July 2nd, 2025, Microsoft announced they were eliminating approximately 9,000 jobs. Now, 9,000, that's a significant number on its own, right? But what does that really tell us about the scale within a company like Microsoft?
Well, yeah, 9,000 is a big headline number, but to put it into perspective, it represents about 4% of their global workforce,
Okay, 4%.
which as of June 2024 was around 228,000 employees, so still a huge company. But what's, I think, really key here is that these cuts, they aren't just isolated to one or two maybe obvious departments, like you might think sales or gaming first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But no, these reductions are spread pretty widely across various teams, different geographical regions, and even different job levels throughout the whole company. It's broad.
And just to add even more context here, this isn't like an isolated incident just for this year. This is actually the third major wave of layoffs for Microsoft just in 2025.
The third one, wow.
Yeah, which brings the total number of positions they've eliminated this year to over 15,000. And, for a bit of historical context, this specific 9,000 job cut, it's the largest single wave the company has seen since January 2023. That's when they cut 10,000 jobs.
Right, I remember that one. So there's definitely a pattern emerging here, or maybe accelerating.
Seems like it.
And, Microsoft's official stance, the company line, frames these actions as, and I'm quoting here, organizational changes necessary to best prepare the company and teams for success in a dynamic market. Standard corporate language, perhaps.
The usual phrasing.
It is worth noting, though, that these big announcements often seem to coincide with the end of their fiscal year, which is June 30th. So it aligns with, those traditional restructuring periods you see across the corporate world, planning for the next year.
Right, the fiscal year-end shuffle. Okay, so these numbers definitely paint a picture of, well, significant scale. But what's the underlying strategy? What's driving this? What are Microsoft's stated reasons, even if they don't explicitly mention AI right alongside these specific cuts?
Yeah, that's the core question. And when you start delving into their financial statements, reading the transcripts from earnings calls, listening to executive comments, a very clear strategic direction emerges. And it's focused intently on, efficiency.
Efficiency, yeah.
Microsoft CFO Amy Hood actually made a pretty significant statement back on the April 30th earnings call. She indicated the company is, again quoting, building high-performing teams and increasing our agility by reducing layers with fewer managers.
Reducing layers, fewer managers, that's specific.
Very specific. This approach seems to be targeting mid-level management positions particularly, while, interestingly, aiming to maintain technical roles, especially in engineering.
That is a really specific target mid-level management. From what you've seen, is there a particular vulnerability, I guess, in that layer right now? Or is this more of a long-term strategic thing they're aiming for across the board?
I think it's definitely strategic. It feels like it stems from a really profound strategic pivot, actually. Microsoft seems to be effectively drawing a blueprint for what an AI-powered enterprise looks like.
How so?
Radically flatter, designed for maximum efficiency and really centered on empowering those highly skilled individual contributors. And this, well, it fundamentally redefines the traditional role of management, doesn't it?
It really does. But you mentioned maintaining technical roles. Yet, we saw some numbers suggesting software engineers were impacted too. For instance, back in June 2025, out of 300 positions cut in Washington state, apparently 22% were software engineers.
Right.
How do we reconcile that? That
Yeah.
seems a little counterintuitive if they're focused on keeping engineers.
Right. Yeah, on the surface, it might seem counterintuitive, but it seems to tie directly into this concept they're talking about called span of control.
Span of control.
Exactly. Microsoft is actively working, in some departments at least, to increase the ratio of engineers to managers. So moving from maybe a ratio of 5.5 engineers per manager all the way up to potentially 10 engineers per manager.
Oh, that's a big jump, 10 to 1.
It is. And if we connect this to that bigger picture, the reducing layers idea, it strongly suggests a push for these flatter organizational structures. The goal seems to be greater efficiency, quicker decision making, by empowering those individual contributors more directly and streamlining that management overhead.
So it's not about cutting all engineers. It's about optimizing how they work and who they report to. Fewer managers overseeing more engineers.
Precisely. It's about the structure, the efficiency of that structure.
Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room. The thing that, while Microsoft might not be directly citing it for these specific layoffs, is certainly this massive backdrop, artificial intelligence. How does AI play into this strategic reshaping?
Oh, it's a colossal factor. You just can't ignore it. I mean, look at the timing. These layoffs are happening concurrently, right alongside Microsoft pouring, estimates are around $80 billion, into AI infrastructure just for fiscal year 2025.
$80 billion. That's
Like,
staggering.
It's a massive investment, and it's not just for, external products or services like Copilot. It's also transforming their internal operations. CEO Satya Nadella himself has stated that something like 30% of Microsoft's internal code,
30%.
yeah, 30% is now being generated using AI tools, like GitHub Copilot, presumably. That's a huge operational shift internally. Think about the potential efficiency gains, or, well, the reduced need for certain types of coding tasks.
Absolutely. And there's another key operational shift happening kind of in parallel, isn't there? Microsoft also moved its sales operations for small and medium-sized businesses, SMBs, to third-party companies.
That's right. They outsourced it.
Which directly impacted its own sales and marketing division. That division's around 45,000 employees, so not insignificant. So while that specific move isn't maybe directly about AI development, it feels like part of that same broader push for efficiency we've been talking about. Cost control, focus.
Exactly. It all weaves together. This whole restructuring, it really reflects these wider industry trends we're seeing everywhere in tech right now. You have companies balancing these incredibly aggressive AI investment
Billions and billions.
with increasing demands, often from Wall Street, for operational efficiency and, frankly, cost control. It really highlights this inherent tension, doesn't it, between a company's ambitious technological leaps forward and, well, job stability for its workforce, especially in what management keeps calling a dynamic market.
A dynamic market indeed.
It seems to be about getting lean, getting agile, perhaps to better capitalize on all that AI investment and future growth, even if it means making some really difficult short-term decisions about personnel.
Okay. We've really taken quite a deep dive here into Microsoft's recent layoffs, trying to look beyond just the headlines. And it feels pretty clear this isn't just about, simple cost cutting. It seems much more like a strategic reshaping of the company itself.
Yeah, driven by that dual focus, right? Operational efficiency on one hand and this massive leap into AI on the other.
We've seen how the company is, intentionally moving towards a leaner management structure, seemingly empowering individual contributors more.
And leveraging AI pretty heavily to automate internal processes like that coding statistic shows. This shift, it has really profound implications, not just for Microsoft, obviously, but potentially for the entire tech landscape, maybe even the future of knowledge work itself.
Definitely food for thought. So for you, the listener, maybe here's a final thought to kind of mull over. Given Microsoft's stated goal of reducing layers with fewer managers and increasing that engineer-to-manager ratio.
And that huge investment in AI-generated code.
Right, and that massive investment in AI doing internal work. What does this emerging operational blueprint, this flatter AI-assisted model, suggest about the kinds of skills and roles that will be most valued or maybe most at risk in this evolving tech landscape going forward?
Yeah, what does the future org chart really look like? That's the big question.
Subscribe. New Deep Dive.